Okay, so today I'm super excited because I have Leah McHenry from the Savvy Musician Academy. And what I love about Leah is that not only is she like a musician herself, so everything she teaches is actually things that she's out there on the battlefront, doing herself testing, experimenting, and she's bringing them back. But she also has managed to build up her music career to the point it's at hundreds of thousands of fans, a six-figure income, all online without touring. And and if that's not enough, she also has five children and she homeschools them. So she's like some sort of super mom. Um, but yeah, I know that she's going to have a ton of awesome, valuable advice for you. So, Leah, thank you so much for jumping on this call today.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure to speak. And I hope that anything I say will just be of super value. I just want to bring value to whoever is listening and watching this, and that they can come away going like, wow, new epiphany. Like that would be awesome. So I'm just super happy to be here. That's me making money on my Shopify site right now, selling merch.
Wow, that's
I should
awesome.
turn that off.
Or just have it keep going on.
Yeah.
Um, awesome. So I'd love to start off by just hearing a little bit more about your story about how you got started with the Savvy Musician Academy.
Well, it's cool because I didn't start out with Savvy Musician Academy. That was like an accident. It all started with me just pursuing my music career and really kind of daring myself, like, can I find a way to have a career online somehow? Like I've got these little kids at home. I really want to make an album. And I know that if I don't pursue this, I'll definitely look back with regret one day. I'll be like, why didn't I pursue that? Why didn't I make an album? Why didn't I do something with it? Like it was really like in my blood to do it.
And how many kids did you have at this point?
At that time, I think I had 3, pregnant with number 4 when I made my first album. So I was already weird. Like I sang that first album, like 9 months pregnant in the studio. I had to like sit the whole time because my back was killing me. So I was already just like, who's even going to listen to this? Like nobody. I'm just doing this for me. And
well, you have 4 kids who could listen to it.
Exactly. Yeah. And if anybody else happens to like this, that will be awesome. But I did it for me first and foremost. So I never in a million years thought that, down the road, I would ever have an academy. Like I never started doing what I do now thinking I want a business and I want to teach other musicians and I want to make money. And I never got into it for that. That was an accident later on. So through pursuing my own career, studying business, really, I found out that I needed to stop studying the music business. And, I stopped reading music books. I didn't even learn from any music gurus out there, like nothing. And I started studying online marketing. I was like, well, what's just going to work in general? Because I know that I can't tour. I've got these little kids at home. They're my priority. I know I'm not going to pick and choose between going on the road, trying to make a name for myself and my family. Like that's not an option. So I made it basically a challenge for myself. What can I do online to promote myself without leaving my house? What can I do? So from there, like I said, I stopped studying what was going on in the music industry. And I was just like, what works online in general? What's working for anybody? And so from there, that's when things really took off. And it was only a matter of a couple of years, me doing this part-time on the side during nap time and weekends, where I crossed into the 6-figure mark. And so in that process, I created an ebook, and it was just me, doing this on the side because my friends would always ask me, what are you doing? Like, how are you doing this with all these kids? And so I kind of got tired of explaining it. So I'm like, you know what? Why don't I put in a little ebook and see if I can do something with that on the side? Like maybe it could even supplement my income, like as a musician, that'd be cool. So I started doing that, and I got really good feedback from it, like from all my friends and musician colleagues that were reading it. And then I realized through studying marketing that, what's going to connect even better is video. So then that turned into the full-blown beast of a course we have now called the Online Musician. Thousands of musicians have gone through it and like totally transformed their music career. So that was completely unexpected. And when we launched that thing just exploded. I had no freaking clue that was going to happen. So all that to say, this whole thing started with me being a musician, doing it in the trenches, like figuring this out, what's going to work and what's going to work online. Because if I can ever add touring to the mix down the road, that's really going to be like the icing on the cake. And whereas I see that the cake itself is like what I can do to promote online, build a fan base around the world, so that when I do want to go on tour, I'm going to have sold out shows. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be fun. I can do whatever I want, really. And so that was the challenge. And I continue to this day. Like, I'm in the middle, I'll be releasing a new album this year. So I'm still hard at work doing this. You know, it's been so much fun and an adventure to be able to just be the musician, be independent, without a label, without a manager. I mean, I don't touch licensing or anything with a 10-foot pole, no agencies, no nothing, just doing it all yourself. The reward has been like, it's the best feeling in the world. I absolutely love it. So that's kind of what I've been up to. And I'm so happy to pass along any of the knowledge that I acquire and the experience with other musicians who like to listen to me, I guess.
Wow. That's
sorry. You think I drank like a pot of coffee, but I didn't. I'm just excited to talk about it.
No, that really is amazing. And I think it's really inspiring probably for a lot of musicians. I'm sure that you've noticed this, but a lot of people are kind of jaded, I think. And a lot of times we can kind of fall into the trap because it's not the way that it used to be, you know, because the rules have changed and it doesn't work the same way. I think a lot of people give up. And there's a lot of excuses, you know, like, oh, I don't have enough time, or, you know, I can't tour. And then here you are, you know, busting through any excuses. So I think that's really inspiring for people. And I also think it's really smart how the approach that you took was really, you know, you haven't even really toured yet. And when you do tour, you're going to already have the audience built. For us, for my band, when we started out, we started touring first, and, you know, not very many people came. We played a couple of shows where it was just like the bartender in the back of the room. And it honestly, like, the touring didn't really work out for us until we had the audience, until we had the fan base. And we did that through, you know, promoting in lines for other shows. So I think really one of the keys to touring is making sure that you actually have an audience that you can bring out to the shows. And sometimes, you know, you can do that through opening for other bands. But I definitely think the way you're doing it, where you're building the audience first and then touring, can be a really effective, you know, first step, rather than people just trying to book shows where they're not really doing anything and they're actually probably losing a lot of money on them.
Yeah, no, that's a common thing I see all the time. And just there's tons of articles out these days where bands have talked about their financials. They're talking about, hey, like, we're just doing it for the exposure, because at the end of the day, we're actually in the red. And unless you're like a big band that sells a ton of merch, because actually that's where the money's at with the big bands. And I know because I have friends who are in some of these big bands that have been around for 30 plus years. So they put in their time to get to the place where now they make good money, but the money's at the merch booth at the back of the room. And, you know, so they're really just recouping costs through ticket sales and such. And of course, a lot of them also want to tour a little more comfortably, so they kind of upgrade to a nicer bus and all those kinds of things. So even still, like, I think a lot of people will find that the money is in the merch, a lot of it, in the physical sales. And people who say that nobody wants physical has no idea what's going on, because I mean, I'm currently selling $1,000 a day or more just in physical CDs. Like who listens to CDs anymore? People do still. And it's not just my niche. It's people who are collector fans, people who actually have a CD collection. They still collect that. And there's other stuff that's making a comeback, vinyl, and even like cassette tapes. I don't know if you've seen that, but for certain genres, it's like kind of a little novelty thing where cassette tapes are coming back. People, you know, there's certain genres where, yes, everybody wants their digital download and stuff, but we also love different formats. I don't know about you, but when I buy a book, I buy it in like 3 or 4 different formats. I'll get like the hardcover, I'll buy the ebook, and I'll get the audio book too, because depending on what I'm doing, if I'm in the car or I'm at an airport or whatever, I like to switch between devices. So I think that's what's happening right now with fans, is they want to consume it in different ways. Yes, digital is convenient and they want to have it on the phone. Yes, they're going to have you on Spotify, but the ones who are serious and collector fans, they want something physical, because for them, it's more than just music. It's a lifestyle. It is a culture. It's a lot more. It's a community too. If you know what you're doing, you can create that. So I think, man, like, there's so much potential for people out there, whether you tour or you don't tour. I'm just an example of what can be done if you are really like hardworking and you're dedicated and you don't dabble in it, you got to jump in with 2 feet and really get serious about it. But it's so possible. And keep in mind, I'm still like, I still consider my music business kind of part-time. Like I'm working on it, daily, 30, 40 minutes sometimes, like with my ads and such. But on the weekend, I usually will spend maybe a chunk, like 4 or 5 hours tops on the weekend. That's it. So it's still kind of part-time, and I'm running Savvy Musician Academy. I've got my kids. We homeschool. We're just crazy people. So it can be done. And I know there are people out there that have way more time on their hands than I do. And just imagine what they could do if they got serious. So yeah.
That's awesome. When people come to Savvy Musician Academy, what are some of the biggest challenges, or like maybe even just one, like what are people struggling with when they first come to you?
Oh my gosh. There's not one thing, it's everything. People tend to be very lost. A lot of people are like so talented and they have all this amazing music, but they basically have no artist identity infrastructure. That's kind of like a term I came up with, but basically they don't have a micro niche, which is basically, if you just think of like a niche, so you have like something like an umbrella genre, for example, like pop or something. And then you have like a subgenre. Within that subgenre, you have a niche. And then within that niche, you might have several different micro niches, right? So it's just like a slight twist that really, you're niching down to the point where there's not that much competition. You become the big fish in the small pond. And most people have never even heard of that. No, never mind, try to figure out what they are. And the key with that is doing a lot of research. You got to do a lot of digging. You want feedback from your fans. And there's a process to figure that out. But that really has been the catalyst for me going from absolute nobody, no fans, no experience in the music business whatsoever, like in complete nobody, to, having the fan base around the world and the 6-figure income, all of that stuff. So beyond the micro niche, I find that people have, from that micro niche springs forth many things. So it's like, from there, you can kind of start creating a culture around your music, a community around your music. Nobody thinks of that. When people think of building a music brand, they're thinking of like a logo. And I'm like, it's not your logo. Your logo is a tiny, tiny little piece of what makes you, your music brand. Your music brand is actually more about a feeling that's consistent and congruent across all platforms than it is about your logo. And it's a feeling, and like what comes to mind when you're not around. What do people say about you when you're not around? That's a brand. So building that, from there, we can talk about, social media. Then there's the more advanced stuff, the marketing, the Facebook ads, all of that. But people, I find, get totally lost in those shiny objects, and they haven't mastered the basics. And I can tell you from experience that if you don't master the basics, like a micro niche, nothing else is going to work for you. Facebook ads won't work for you. Don't even bother, because you're throwing money at something that is not even targeted. You don't even know who you are yet. So, but when you master that foundation, you've got your micro niche, you have quality music, you understand your culture and community you're trying to build, and you have a real solid identity, and your fans better than they know themselves, because that's the key. When you understand those things, then you can advance to stuff like paid advertising and stuff. At that point, it's going to work like freaking gangbusters. But until that point, and I'd say like 98% of musicians are not ready for that. And it would be a waste of their time and effort to even go there yet until they master those basics. I think that is the best thing I could even say. And I was making thousands of dollars per month as a musician long before I ever knew anything like what a Facebook pixel was or funnels or anything like that. I was making thousands of dollars just from honing in on my micro niche, figuring out who I am, connecting with fans, being authentic, being real, and not giving up. Basically, when other people would quit, I just wouldn't quit. I just kept going because I didn't care, because I was doing it for me. And then soon enough, like, people picked it up and they're like, they connect, right? And once you connect, then you have a fan for life. And a fan for life buys a lot of merch, and they support you, and they want to support your crowdfunding campaign or whatever you're doing. So that's the whole goal. So when it's never just one thing that people really struggle with when they come to Savvy Musician Academy, but I find starting with that foundation is absolutely pivotal. We got to get you you got to get your artist identity infrastructure. We got to get that foundation solid, and then everything else falls into place.
Brilliant. Yeah, I've definitely seen musicians who try to skip the foundation and they try to go just to the Facebook ads. And then when I talk with them, they're like, "Oh, those Facebook ads are a scam. Like they don't work. I spent $100." It's like, well, no, like it isn't that. It is, you do have to go back to the foundation. So, okay. So this micro niche or niche, how do you say it up there?
I say niche. I know some people call it niche, and it depends on where you live. It's all good.
Niche. The micro niche.
Tomato.
Right. So, okay. So let's say that someone wants to dive in and discover their micro niche. What would be some first steps for them to discover that?
Well, the first thing I would probably have them do is take a look at the music they have. And this is where, the process begins, because a lot of times people are like, well, I don't do one kind of music. I got different genres. What do I do? So we first start.
Everybody likes my music.
My music is for everyone, right? If it's for everyone, It's for no one. And so first of all, if you do multiple genres and you have different bands, we have to narrow that down. You got to pick something to really get it off the ground, because there's an old Russian proverb, I believe, and it says, "He who chases two rabbits catches none." So the issue is you can't do it all at the same time. My favorite approach would be, first of all, consider say you have two projects and they're different genres and you love them both. Which one is the most commercially or like marketable? Which one's more viable for a market? And how do you know that? You would do a little research, of course. You can anything from Wikipedia to Amazon to Spotify. So there's that kind of research. And then there's like the 3 F's that I would say: your friends, your family, and your fans or followers. And just get some feedback on them. Like, hey, which of these genres, like let's say you're like kind of a jack of all trades and you do like everything awesome. Like which one resonates the most? Because you got to start there. You have to narrow this down. You got to pick something and then stick with it for a while. Get that baby off the ground. What you can do in the future then is, once you've built up a fan base and a loyal fan base and they really know you very well for something, you can then, now you have an audience where you can kind of take them along for a ride with you and say, hey, I have this other side thing. You might like it. The mistake though is to do that too soon and totally confuse your fans. And there's a saying in marketing that if you confuse, you'll lose. So if you're one day doing country, next day pop, next day bluegrass, you're confusing your audience. They don't know what to think. They're like, well, he's just a talented musician. Cool. But they're not going to buy your stuff unless you're busking or something, right? And then you got stuff for sale there. But you're not going to build this like tight knit community, this culture that's like die hard. And they like want to pay like $1,000, for some VIP experience with you. They're not going to do that. So you've got to get focused. So that would be step one. Research, feedback from the 3 F's: family, friends, followers, and then choose something and say you're going to stick with that for a good couple of years. I mean, I understand as an artist, we don't like to be put in a box. So yeah, we're going to experiment on the side. Yeah, we might still do that thing, but really focus your marketing efforts and putting your time, effort, and money into the one project.
Yeah, that's so important. It actually reminds me of my wife. She is like, it's really weird because she's like a blonde cheerleader, but she listens to like not death metal, but like hardcore metal. And there are a couple of examples where she was listening to a band. Hopefully they're not watching this interview right now. They're just gonna be really mad. But Crown the Empire was like in that niche, and they were like pretty hardcore. They had some screaming in it. And then they decided, or maybe it was their management or their label or someone decided like, oh, we need to make this more like appeal more to the mainstream. And so they became a lot more pop, pretty much dropped all of the components of what made them who they were, their niche. And instantly she just dropped off. She wasn't a fan anymore because she's like, this doesn't, like, she was confused. She thought, they're losing what made them special. Yeah, they might be appealing to the masses, but they're losing what made them special.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense. Yeah. And I've seen there's several other artists where, they kind of get away with certain things, but they will lose a portion of the fan base. And you just have to accept that fact that, hey, when you introduce something new or a different direction, people, they get attached emotionally to your original sound. And if you deviate from that, some people get upset, you're going to lose some fans. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to do authentically what you need to do to feel fulfilled as an artist. So if that means you change direction, fine, so be it, right? It's not the end of the world. You get new fans. But the point is mostly that pick something you love, pick something that's responsive, that resonates with the market, that there is a demand for. And by demand, I don't mean millions of people out there, because the thing is, with a micro niche, you don't need millions of fans. You actually only need a small amount of super fans, of people who are just like real collectors. And by collector fans, I mean people who, they're the type of people that buy physical merchandise. If you think of like Star Trek, Star Trekkies, like they have all the comic books, they have all the DVDs, they have the action figures, they have they collect stuff, right? It's part of like in their home decor. They have like shrines of this sort of thing.
Yeah, Disney is a great example of that too. Like Disney's such an amazing job with their merchandise.
Exactly. And I have friends, actually, there's a member on the Savvy Musician team. She is a Disney freak and, has to go to Disneyland like twice a year and, buys all the Disney stuff. So it's hilarious. But I'm like, yeah, you see, you're a super fan. You are a super fan of this thing. It's a culture. Do you see how Disney has created a culture of, it's not just kids, it's adults too. It's the movies, it's the atmosphere, it's what it does for you. It's a feeling. It's really a feeling, and nostalgic childhood, all the movies we grew up with. Like and we just have to do that with our music. Sorry, I hit my mic. Got excited there. We have to do the same thing with our music, because the music is bigger than that. It can be. It doesn't just have to be, an album on a disc. It can be so much bigger than that. It can be more meaningful. It's also a legacy that we leave behind as well, which I think is something sometimes we don't really think about that, but it is. And that's what Disney is. Long after Walt Disney has passed, like this legacy has continued. It's grown. It's bigger than it ever has been. So I think we need to be thinking long-term, not just short-term. And so, not to put pressure on anybody when picking your micro niche, but it does set the course of your career and who you will be attracting for the years to come.
So could you give me a couple of examples of micro niches just so we can kind of get an understanding of what they look like?
Yeah, sure. Well, for myself, that's probably the easiest example. My micro niche would be like Celtic or fantasy metal. And you'll see I kind of interchange words there because depending on the album or the song, it may shift a little bit. And so it's not something that's like, cemented in stone, but it's small enough that people who are searching for that term will find me very quickly. So here's the deal. So for Celtic metal, the umbrella genre at the very top would be heavy metal. So that's the biggest one out there, or even rock, right? Within the heavy metal, the subgenre would be like symphonic metal. Then it's like a subgenre below that, which is really more like a niche, would be like female fronted symphonic metal. Now, as a rabbit trail note, there's some women that don't appreciate that title. They're like, well, what does it matter if it's female fronted? What matters if I'm a woman or not? Well, I'm saying, well, hey, it's because typically in the metal scene, there's less women. So it's kind of different that you are a woman. So it's differentiating. It'd be one thing to call it female fronted metal. Well, that doesn't really describe anything, but female fronted symphonic metal is a real thing. And the reason I know that is because if I type it into Google or if I type it into the YouTube search bar, it actually comes up. It brings me search results with that title. So the key to narrowing this down is to not make up a string of adjectives and say, oh, I'm, jazz, bluegrass, metal fusion, feel-good music. Like that's not describing anything. That's just, you going on a tangent. But it has to be a real existing thing. So think in keywords, right? So I go from female fronted symphonic metal because it's a real thing. People put together entire like YouTube playlists of all the different female fronted metal bands, for example, or symphonic metal bands. Now below that, I'm saying, okay, because I got that symphonic element, I'm going one step further. What's my little twist that I'm putting on this whole thing? What makes me different from all those other symphonic metal bands? Well, it's the fact that I incorporate Celtic and fantasy elements. So, you see my harp in the background. I sing vocally with little inflections like you find in Celtic music. I have a very like kind of soft, ethereal, feminine vocal, kind of like Enya. And so I use that. I use different instruments and things like that to accentuate that twist. If I took those instruments out and I just left it normally, it would just sound like regular symphonic metal. But with that twist, just adding those, adding the odd flute, adding the odd little pipe, adding the harp, adding my little inflections. Now suddenly it just sounds different. It sounds fresh, like something that hasn't quite been done before. And now when people search for that term, I come up at the top because there's not that many people. And so that's how you avoid the needle in the haystack syndrome, is by actually doing something a little bit different. So unfortunately for people who are really in the mainstream, it's a lot more difficult to stand out. And so I always encourage them, let's work on your twist, because I know you may be pop. I know you might be like pop rock or something, but let's dig deeper. Let's try to find what makes you a little unique, because the fact is that you have all kinds of influences. There's music you listened to when you were a kid from your parents or whatever that actually is coming out in your music and you don't even know it. It's there, but you don't know it. So we got to dig a little deeper and find out what you're actually all about. And then we'll come up, we'll do the research. We'll find exactly what your niche is. So for me, it's like Celtic metal. I've seen other people. I'm just trying to think. Do you know what yours is?
I would say with my band, Paradise Fears, it was definitely, so we kind of discovered it as we went. So it sounds like the process you're describing is a lot of like, refining. It's starting with this umbrella and then it's diving in and it's like, what makes you unique? For us, the thing that kind of made us stand out was, our umbrella niche was alternative rock. First it was like pop punk, pop rock. And then it kind of became a little bit more alternative acoustic-y as we grew up. And the part that kind of set us apart, and this was before more bands started doing this. This was kind of a wave that came on. But our lead singer started incorporating some spoken word sections into our songs, where he would just, it would be alt rock, and then all of a sudden there'd be this speech in the middle of the song, and it was always something like inspirational and moving. And if I had to say that we had like a micro niche, I would say that's how I would put it. It's like inspirational acoustic rock.
That's cool. And I know, and you've been a student of Savvy Musician Academy as well. Did that process of finding your micro niche help you guys, like in that, by the time you refined it, because it's definitely a process, how long did it take you through going through those steps?
I think what it really does is finding that micro niche just gives you a lot of clarity, because I think for me personally, when I went through Savvy Musician Academy, that was for my solo music. And for me, that was about like a year and a half ago. And that's when I got married and I started thinking about starting a family. And that's one thing that drew me to you too, is because I was like, okay, well, I don't really want to tour as much anymore. Like, and I want to start a family. And so for me, what that kind of helped me do was clarify, who am I? Like, what's my artist identity, apart from the band? Because such a big part of who I was linked up with the band. So what I would say for anyone who's watching this right now, like what they can kind of expect through going through that process is that, it might take a little bit of time. Like, you might just not just like stumble on it like the first thing you try. But I think that just having this as like a guiding star that you move towards, knowing that you might, like, you're always going to be refining. Like it's part of like who you are. It's your identity. And the way that you described it, finding your unique twist and just starting from the umbrella, getting more refined, is just a really great way to get clarity. So you don't feel like you're just lost in the ocean, but you actually, the way you describe it, I really like, is like you're a big fish in a small pond rather than, a small fish in a big pond.
Yeah. And I find and beyond the clarity, all the marketing, all the momentum, all the sales that you make come after that point, at least from my experience, trying to build something from scratch online. Other people, maybe you make sales if you're already a touring artist or you teach piano lessons, you're making money other ways. But for me, I had nothing. I started zero, like I had no knowledge. So for me, nothing really took off until I figured that out until I had that clarity. And from there, it was so much easier to connect with fans and figure out who am I, who are they? And like, who are these people who are like latching onto my music? Like, I got to find out everything I can about them. And then I find out there's so much like me. Okay, this is cool. Like, I would actually hang out with these people. We're a lot alike. And from there, it's so much easier to build a culture. And so now I know everything about them. I know what books they read. I know the video games they play. I know where they shop. I know their favorite blogs, websites. I know the merchandise they buy. And man, it's very easy to create a steady stream of income when you know your fans that well, because I even ask them basically, what do you want me to sell you? I survey them and like, hey, what kind of items do you want to see me add to my merch shop? And they tell me, and then I go put it on there and sell it. So,
what a crazy idea.
Yeah.
It works.
It actually works. Yeah. So, I mean, anybody who says that, the marketing online doesn't work, the Facebook ads, listen, it comes down to getting this foundation. It comes down to the micro niche that you figure out your micro niche, everything else is going to fall into place. It's all going to make sense. It'll take some time. You're not going to figure it out overnight. There's no magic pill, of course, but that is a massive step in the right direction. And it's just so satisfying knowing like I have an identity. I know who I am. I know who my fans are. We love each other. This is great. So it's pretty awesome.
Very cool. So you described, finding your micro niche is really effective when you make sure that you're finding something that people actually search for. So like people are looking on Google for your micro niche. How do you actually do that? I know that there's like a Google keyword planner. Is that what you use for that? Or you just type in on like Google to find it? Or how do you find those things that people are searching for?
Well, I have an extensive process. I can give you a few tips here now, like we've talked about, but I have an extensive process for how to do that. It's like in module 1 in the Online Musician, if anybody wants to actually work with me a little more closely. But I basically use a mix of, like I said, getting feedback from friends, family, and followers. I do that a mix with like searching for example, bands that are similar to mine. So first of all, I like kind of survey my friends, family, and followers, and I'm like, okay, what other bands do I sound like? So once you've narrowed down the genre you really want to focus on, it's like, well, what other bands do I sound like? And what you're looking for is some common threads from people, where they're just like, oh, this one band keeps coming up. And you're like, I don't think I really sound like them. I don't know why they keep saying that, but just go with me on this. From there, you're going to find a few bands and maybe some that you did not expect at all. And you start researching them and you start looking at like, where are these bands located? What genres are they classified as? I know I don't sound exactly like them, but that, people keep telling me that. So there must be some kind of connection, something that's making them say that. So from there, you can really start to do a little more research. And it, like you said, it's just like chipping away at it. You start to like, your eyes kind of start to get open. The scales kind of start to fall off. You're like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And from there, you can start doing searches within, like, I love YouTube search because of the predictive text that they give you. So if you type in, country, and then you start to type M, it'll tell you all the suggestions that they think you're going to be searching for. And it actually shows up in rank of popularity. So whatever the first suggestion is that pops up is actually the most popular one, just as a side note when you're doing research. So there's that kind of stuff. I like using tools like even Amazon, and just the way certain platforms are ranking things to in the research process. But yeah, there's a multiple step process to figuring it out. And that's, like I said, like some people find out, in the first few days, they're like, oh, I got it. And like they have this huge epiphany. Other people, me, it took me over 2 years, but of course I did it the long way and I didn't even know I was searching for a micro niche. So now people can take the shortcut and probably figure it out, in a relatively short amount of time. I don't really like putting time frames on it because everyone's in a different place, but it's not going to take forever, but it also won't take a day. So, and like you said, as you go on, it will become clearer and clearer to you. And you have some testing and experimenting to do too. I ask my fans to sometimes define me just even though I know my micro niche, I will just ask them for feedback now and then. I'll say, hey, how would you describe my music? And I start paying attention to the words they use, because they're the ones who first told me it was Celtic. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't realize that. And from there, I always say, why guess when you can ask? And so I think your fans are going to tell you more than you could ever imagine. So between that, research, and some of these steps and processes, you're definitely on your way to figuring it out.
Yeah, I definitely remember that was one of, if not my favorite part of the course, was that process of surveying and reaching out to the existing list that I had. Because, at the time I didn't have a very big personal email list, and I sent them out that survey, and I was kind of blown away by how many people actually filled it out, and like all the things that they were saying, really, really nice things. I didn't realize that people felt the way that they did. And a lot of the questions that we put on there were really smart and kind of give you a really clear idea of, what they think of when they listen to your music, and how they feel, and how they like what they associate with you. And I think ultimately one of the core components of having a successful music career, like you've been talking about, is your connection with your fans. It's kind of what it's all about, right? And
Absolutely.
the better you can get to understand them, and the better that they understand you, it's just that connection. This, music in general, that's one of the most amazing things about it. So I definitely think your course, that part where you're surveying and you're asking questions, and that being a continual process, that's not something that really goes away, is really smart.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I survey my fans probably a couple times a year. And I recently sent out a survey not too long ago asking again about, hey, what kind of merchandise items would you like? And I go so far as to say, hey, guess what? You guys voted on t-shirts being the top item that you would like to see more of from me. Now let's go a step further. And I made a new survey. I was like, all right, let me give you a whole bunch of different pictures of art that I just downloaded off Pinterest or something. And I made sure they're all very different designs. One's like kind of tribal looking, one's like really fancy art, and 10 different images, and ask them, hey, which direction should we go in? I mean, I get detailed. I'm like, why should I guess what they would like and spend money on designs and printing all this stuff when they can just tell me, Leah, we like that. We like that design, and we like that color scheme. So I went a step further. I even gave them color schemes. I gave them ugly color schemes. I gave them, all these different ones. And in the end, my audience, this will be different for everybody. My audience surprised me, and they ultimately voted. The top vote was like a grayscale. It was like black, gray, white. I was like, oh, wow, okay, easy to please. And then below that was like the red family, so like kind of burnt oranges and reds. I was like, now that is so interesting. I just wouldn't have guessed that. But why guess when you can ask? So this is I think a very unique twist that I have in my approach, is that I treat my fans like a marriage, where it's a two-way relationship, and I bounce things off them before I go and make decisions. That's how my husband and I operate. Like, we're partners, and he's a partner in SWM Musician Academy, but I respect him enough that I bounce decisions off of him before I go and take an action, because I love him and I respect him and I want his feedback. I genuinely want it. And he does the same with me. And I treat my fans the same way. And there are some people, I think even on this panel, that, that talk about treating your fans, it's like a marriage. Like Tom Jackson specifically, he talks about treating the audience like a marriage. And it's like, are you dating them or are you married to them? Well, my tribe of super fans, I'm married to them for sure. People.
Is that legal up in Canada?
Pardon me?
Is that legal up in Canada?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe some parts of it. Yeah. And, like new fans coming in, well, we're dating, right? New fans coming in, I don't assume that they're a super fan. We get to know each other. I don't, assume they're going to buy stuff on the first day. But listen, I've honed in my micro niche, my culture, and I know so much about them that I can and do run ads to cold audiences and get sales the first day. Like, I'm doing several $100s a day in CDs, so like music, and I can see from my analytics, it's the very first time they've ever been to my shop, they've ever been to my website, the first time they listen to it, and they buy. But the only reason that happens is not because I threw up an ad. It's because I've studied my butt off to know them. to know my audience, to know myself, to know what they like, to know the words they use. Those surveys that I do, I take the words that they use and I put that in my marketing. I put it in my emails. I put it in everywhere. So it's like I keep my finger on the pulse of this whole thing. So it is, when you do that, success will come. So it all starts with that micro niche. And I think, it seems simple, but it's life-changing when you do that.
Yeah. Seems like a lot of times the most simple things are the things that make the biggest difference. One thing you're saying that I really agreed with, I thought was really smart, is using that analogy of a relationship, like a romantic relationship. I think a lot of artists and bands, the mistake is that they try to jump into marriage too quickly. And like you said, like it is possible, even with cold traffic, once you really dial it in and you know what you're doing, you can get cold sales right away. But I also think that it's really valuable to think of our relationships with our fans as relationships and not just like a one-way relationship, with your surveys, with that communication where you're actually connecting with them. That's like a real human relationship rather than, imagine, for example, that we are having this conversation here and literally one person talked the entire time and the other person never talked, then it would feel a little bit, it just doesn't feel like it doesn't flow well. And so I think one big epiphany for a lot of musicians is realizing that it really is a relationship. It needs to be two ways. And when you ask questions, when you actually get their feedback and you treat it more like a conversation, then you can actually build a real connection with those people and you can discover more about them and you can cater your marketing to them specifically.
Yeah, you got to get rid of the notion that you have to have some kind of mystique, some celebrity mystique, and that you got to have a wall up. I know when I started this, I kind of felt that way. And honestly, it might not seem like it, but I am actually rather introverted and I feel very shy. I feel shy about letting people see the real me. Like you will rarely see me without makeup on my Instagram account. I am literally that insecure and shy. So I have to make myself take selfies, for example, and show my audience. I always say, take more selfies than you are comfortable with, because most musicians I know hate it. They don't make me take more selfies, Leah. I'm like, you have to do it because they need to see your face. They need to see our faces. They need to connect. They need to know that we aren't hiding behind a screen, which is very easy to do. And we need to show our authenticity, who we really are. Let them into your studio. Let them see you. I need to work on this more. I need to let them see more of me without makeup. I need to just show who I am and be totally okay with it. And that will connect so much more than anything else we could do. And, on the social media end of it, you want to make sure that as you are posting yourself and showing who you are and building this relationship, that you also somehow, it's a dance between showing who you are and all of that stuff I just said, and also being consistent with a theme. So if you were to look at my Instagram account, for example, when you scroll, you basically will notice there's a very distinct theme all the way through my account. You won't see one day a picture of a cat, the next day some meme, internet meme, the next day a picture of a door and then a mountain and then, what I ate for lunch. You're not going to see all of that. You're going to see something very consistent all the time because I want people to know exactly what they can expect of me. And you'll notice I'm like that on any other platform I'm on. So really, and I'm not on very many. You don't have to be everywhere. You only need to pick one or two to really dominate. But so for me, it's Facebook, and I'm more on Instagram. I am on YouTube, but I really haven't utilized it. That's not where I tend to go. So, and it's great though. But yeah, having a theme that's consistent with your micro niche and your culture, all of this is an outworking. That's why I always come back to the micro niche, because until you figure that out, you can't figure out what your theme on Instagram is going to be, because you don't know. You don't even know what the music is. You don't even know what to call it. So until you know that, you can't really have a whole lot of success with anything, really. So that's why it's step one, is figure that out.
Awesome. Yeah. So start with the theme, look inward first, decide what is the micro niche, dial it in. And then from there, the branding and the social media and stuff kind of branches out and it becomes a lot more natural.
Yes.
Very cool. I really like what you say about letting yourself be authentic. And sharing that with your fans. And that's obviously, like, as human beings, that's one thing that everyone struggles with sometimes, is letting themselves be seen. What are some tips for people for that specifically? And maybe also we could tie that into Facebook Lives, because I feel like Facebook Live is a great example of one of the reasons it works so well is because it's so raw, because it really is authentic for a lot of people. So would you recommend that as like an extension of that idea of being authentic and being raw? And how would you recommend people get started with that?
Yeah, definitely. Facebook Live, any kind of live. I mean, almost every platform now has a live feature. So Instagram has a live, Twitter has Periscope, YouTube has live. You know, whatever platform your fans are on, that's where you need to be. And you need to do that research to figure out exactly where they are. But adding a live aspect is definitely valuable. And I need to do it more myself. And I try to do it semi-regularly. The more regularly you can do it, the better results you'll get, as long as it's not literally you just sitting there in your living room doing nothing. So there has to be an element of, like, at least documenting something, whether I would even be fine if you say you're going for a walk with your dog, you're just like talking out loud, kind of vlogging in a way. So if you use it in like a vlogging aspect, also letting them behind the scenes, show them in the studio when you're recording stuff, just let them hang out and see that. So there's something happening. Also, there could be like live performances where you just like pull out the guitar and start playing like they're in your living room, right? Like that is unfiltered and raw and cool. So definitely add an aspect of that. I think we live in an age right now, and I think it's so appealing because everything has a filter. You know, everything's photoshopped, everything's like pre-planned. People like, you know, position their fork on their plate a certain way and get the lighting just right so they can make this amazing, you know. Everybody's like, okay, I'm tired of that bullshit. Just tell me who you really are. Who are you? So with the live, anything can happen, right? Like, it's hard to fake stuff when it's live. So I think that's the appeal. Of course, and also live is being really, I mean, the algorithms love live right now on every platform, and they're getting pushed. So pushed to the top, I mean, as far as like you'll get notifications about it. It goes to the top of the feed. It lives on forever. There's really no downsides to doing live feeds other than, make sure you're doing something. So I've had some people say, hey, I've turned on live for like an hour and a half and nobody came. I was like, well, what did you do during the live? I don't know. I sat there. I was like, okay, well, that would explain it. Right. So, I mean, having that balance, like be a little bit entertaining, have something planned, but be yourself. And I think you can't go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually heard about and I saw a country singer who, she had like a daily routine where she would be drinking coffee and she would go live with her acoustic guitar, and she called it like coffee time or something. And she put in the links, I think it was like actually in the comment, she like pinned the comment, and it said virtual tip jar, and it was just on PayPal. It was like a super simple link. And she made over $100,000 in a year from doing that every single day. And she started out with not like a huge, audience or anything, but through doing those live streams, through building that connection. She also, one thing that's really cool with Facebook too, I'm not sure if you can do it on Instagram, but they added it where like if you're on your phone, you can invite people who are watching the live stream to actually be on the Facebook Live. And so I saw that she was doing that too. She was having conversations, she was taking requests, and it was just such a cool, because it does come back to that same idea of connection and, being able to connect with people here in this moment. And when you can, specifically say someone's name or like, you acknowledge them, then I feel like that's a really powerful way to connect with your fans.
Totally. That's a new feature, being able to bring people up in like interview mode. So that's cool. I haven't even tried that yet with fans or anything. So that'll be definitely something to explore. You
can bring me on there.
Yeah, sure. That'd be fun.
Me and Leah hanging out.
I was shocked. I didn't know there was a piano there. So I was like, what's happening?
I know, that's kind of my like little twist that I have down here. I like to shock people there. So here's an analogy I really like to come back to, is that in a lot of ways, the music industry and where we're at right now is kind of, I don't know if you've ever been like surfing before, but when you're surfing, what you have to do is like you get out there and then like you're on the board, and what you have to do is like you look back and you see the approaching waves. And if you're trying to catch the wave, then you start rowing along with it. You see it coming, and so you kind of start going with it. And if you do it right, then when wave hits, then it propels you forward, and you shoot with so much momentum and force that it's incredible. And eventually the wave dies, but then, you go and you catch the next wave. And so I feel like a lot of people in the industry, they're romanticizing the past. Like there's a wave that's already passed, and they're like trying to catch up with it. And like people are like talking about the wave, like this is what you need. It's like, no, it's kind of gone. But there's always opportunities, and there's always, if you like kind of look back and you start rowing with them, then you might be one of the people who can catch the waves. So do you see any sort of like upcoming trends or opportunities that you think could be a potential wave for musicians?
Well, I can only speak from personal experience. Like I'm fully immersed in the music business world because I'm doing it. And I think that is one thing that definitely sets me apart, is like, this is my life, is my music career, and then sharing what I know. So as far as trends go, my favorite trend right now is basically going into like an e-commerce direction with my music, where, like I said, it's become bigger than the music itself. It's actually become a lifestyle brand. And so from there, I mean, with different, between like drop shipping, between print on demand, there's all these different kinds of options and cool things. And I don't want to overwhelm people, but there's a lot you can do. I mean, you can print yoga mats with your label on it, with your logo on it. You can print shower curtains. You can print like dog beds. You can print pillows. You can print leggings. You can print socks. I mean, the sky is the limit. And so for me, like I said, I really only just got started, and like my income is going crazy right now, and it's so much fun experimenting with this. So you can definitely see more from me in the future, probably in courses and teaching and trainings on this as I systematize it, because there's a lot of e-commerce training out there, but nobody's doing this in the music world outside of like actual labels. So you have like big pop stars like Rihanna and stuff with their own fragrance line and their own clothing lines, but nobody's doing it as an independent artist. So I'm in that's where I'm going right now. And, I teach that there's really 5 big mainstreams of income that I've personally have affected my bank account. And that's what I like to teach people to do. It's more than that, but those are the 5 that I have really seen be really beneficial to me. And, like I said, I created most of my music income from digital music and sales, but right now, and I still have that. And it's actually been 3 years since my last album release, and that's still increasing. But the biggest thing right now for me is like turning my music into e-commerce. So I'm selling CDs, I'm selling vinyl, selling t-shirts, and selling like trinkets and bobbleheads and whatever people want from me. I get the hilarious requests, but so that is a trend that I am very excited to dive more into, because I don't think anybody else is really doing anything like that, and it's becoming really profitable, and it's something I can teach and would love to share with people. So that's where I see it going.
Very cool. Well, hey, Leah, thank you so much for being on this interview. I feel like there is a lot of gold for anyone who's watching this right now. So if anyone is watching this and they're curious about learning more about the online musician and your courses, where can they go to learn more from you?
I would love to work with anybody a little more closely if they got any value out of this. I love to just share everything that I'm learning, experiencing. You can find us at SWMusicianAcademy.com. From there, you can see everything that we offer. I always have different courses going. There's a free workshop there. We've got a free Facebook group. You can just come check us out. I also have something for people if they want to know specifically about the main pillars of how I set up my 6-figure music business, start to finish, like everything. What are all the components in my music business? And that is a link that I'll give you. I think it's SavvyMusicianAcademy.com/6 figures with a 6. So SavvyMusicianAcademy.com/6 figures. You can download a PDF, and it's got like, if you want to know how I got to 6 figures in less than a couple of years, that whole blueprint is there for you. So you can just download it and just start doing it, and let me know how it goes. I want to hear about your results.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was so much fun.